जी Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students, our today's lecture is related to the production and admissibility of electronic documents in courts. As all of us know that this law is dated back to 1984 and before that this is English made law and it was promulgated in 18 something, and then in the form of Evidence Act. Then it took the name of Qanun-e-Shahadat Order 1984. But with the passage of time and with the advancement in technology, in telecommunication and in computer related things, we need to look back into the articles of this law, and gradually and with the passage of time, after every decade or 5-10 years, we need to change the things accordingly to fit into the society. So all of you know that this concept, the concept of electronic documents, this is getting a huge space in the society, in the business transactions, in the social transactions, in the official communications and otherwise worldwide, whether it is in between two individuals, to companies, to corporations, or to states. So basically the mode of communication in the form of paperwork or hard copies, that has been reduced a lot in last 10 years, and the people have moved towards the electronic form of documents. So a problem was arisen in the courts in this regard, that how to entertain the electronic documents. So there was not a specific criteria or guidance related to that. In order to fill that gap in the existing law, in 2002 Electronic Transaction Ordinance was promulgated and enforced. By means of that ordinance, certain provisions of Qanun-e-Shahadat Order were also amended and modified accordingly. So I am going to discuss a few of them today in today's lecture, and you may have a question on this in your final terms examination as well, where you would be asked about the admissibility and production of electronic documents in court. So if we throw back in past, in our previous in our midterms, we discussed about chapter 5 of documentary evidence article. If you remember, article number was 72 and 73, where we talked about the thing that the content of document may be proved either by the primary evidence and secondary evidence. Then we discussed about the primary evidence. What is the primary evidence? So we looked into it and we found that primary evidence is basically the original document itself, the original contract of sale, contract of mortgage, lease agreement, tenancy agreement, principal and agent agreement, or whatever agreement you just name it. So basically the original copy of it, bearing the original seal and stamp and signatures of parties and the attesting witnesses, we found that this is the primary evidence to prove the contents of that document, if the contents of that document disputed at any stage between the parties. Similarly, we talked about the thing that if a document is executed in counterparts, for example, in case of agreements between two international organizations, two companies, or two states, in that case the agreements are executed in counterparts. For example, state A will execute its own part of engagements, while the state B will execute its own part of engagements. So part A would be considered as primary evidence against party A, and secondary evidence against party B. Similarly, part B would be considered as primary evidence against party B and as secondary evidence as against party A. Similarly, we discussed about the documents which are executed in several parts. For example, the content of the document or the magnitude of the contract is overwhelming, is enormous, and this is difficult, this is impossible to conclude everything in a single document. And sometimes in between two companies, multinational companies, two states, the things execute and decide with the passage of time, and as they decide, they execute it in the form of document with the passage of time. For example, initially they have decided and they have agreed on certain things, so they brought that in black and white in the form of paper and executed it. After 1 month, the things got clear and they executed certain different things and they agreed about certain different things. So in these type of cases, mostly the agreements, the contracts, the deeds are executed in several parts. So each several part would be considered as primary evidence. Now the question arises that if an offer or if an acceptance has been executed by means of a text message, an email, a fax, or a phone call, or through an audio or video recording, what would be the fate of these emails, fax, text messages, or the transcriptions of those audio video clips. So the law was silent about it. In order to fill this gap, this Article 73 was amended by Electronic Transaction Ordinance 2002, and the following insertion was made to this article, which states that a printout or other form of output of an automated information system shall not be denied the status of primary evidence solely for the reason that it was generated, sent, received, or stored in electronic form if the automated information system was in working order at all material times and for the purposes thereof. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, it shall be presumed that the automated information system was in working order at all material times. It is stating that if any offer, any acceptance, any agreement, any contract, any offer to do a joint venture, any offer to do a job, to do a business of a partnership, any tenancy, any principal agent agreement, or any type of agreement, any offer, acceptance that has been communicated, generated, received, or stored by using an automated information system, for example, by sending an email, by sending an audio message, a video message, or by a text message, a WhatsApp message, or any type of automated information system, that shall not be denied the status of primary evidence solely on the basis of the fact that, okay, because this document was generated through an automated information system, so this cannot be classified as primary evidence within the context of Article 73. Instead, it is stating that if the document is generated through automated information system, it was stored, received, sent through an automated information system, and if it is if the party who is intended to prove that email, that document, that audio, that video transcription in a court of law, and if it also proves that the information system wasn't hacked, it wasn't misused, the proper security procedures were there, the email account hasn't been misused by any other person, the office was kept locked, the computer, the laptop wasn't stolen, wasn't misused, it has kept in lock and key. So as all the security measures were in place, that's why this offer of this joint venture, of this job, of this partnership, of this contract of sale, this contract of mortgage, this was basically generated, sent and received by this party to me. So this is a genuine document, so and it should be considered as a genuine, as a primary evidence in this case, and the case should be while examining this evidence, the court should be decided in my favor, because I got this letter, I got this email, I got this message. So the law is saying that the contention of this party shall be appreciated and accepted if it proves so that all the security procedures were in place and the system hasn't been misused. So that's why this offer, this acceptance, this agreement was duly executed by the party about whom the presumption is being propagated by the adverse party, that I got this offer, acceptance or this letter from this party who is denying so. So this is basically a legitimate and authentic and an admissible evidence, and as a primary evidence, not as a secondary evidence. This email, this fax, this text message, this voice message shall be considered as a primary evidence in order to prove the contents of that document. So then there is an explanation, a further explanation to this rule, that a printout or other form of reproduction of an electronic document other than a document mentioned in explanation 3 above, first generated, sent, received or stored in electronic form, shall be treated as primary evidence, where a secondary evidence, where a security procedure was applied thereto at the time it was generated, sent, received or stored. So same thing, if the guy who is intended to prove that email, if he proves so that the security procedures, they are not breached, they were at place duly, so that's why the document was duly sent through the system, through the email account of so and so party. That's why this document should be considered as primary evidence in order to prove the contents of this document. Afterwards, we would move to Article 78A, which states that proof of electronic signature and electronic document. If an electronic document is alleged to be signed or to have been generated wholly or in part by any person through the use of an information system, and where such allegation is denied, the application of a security procedure to the signature or the electronic document must be proved. So some of you may also know about the concept of electronic signature. In this era of technology, you are not supposed to necessarily sign the document with the pen while sitting in your office or at your place. On electronic documents, you can put your electronic signatures as well, and they are considered as valid document and valid signature and valid evidence in order to prove the contents of or the authenticity of the signatures or document. So in this case, one party is alleging that, okay, look, this document has been duly executed, signed, stamped, sealed by so and so party, but now it is refuting and refusing to comply with this document, which is against the law and which is causing an injury to my rights, my due rights in this regard. So a remedy should be given to me in this regard. And the other party is claiming that I don't own these signatures. So in this case as well, if the party who is propagating that this document belongs, sent by that party, and these signatures belong to that party, if this party proves that the security procedures were at place and the security of the computer, laptop, mobile phone, that hasn't been breached, so and that was at place, so this is obvious that the document was sent by this party by using his or her own email, and these electronic signatures were also put by him on this document. So that's why this document and these signatures should be considered as valid for the purpose of evidence in this regard. So if the benchmark in this regard as well is the proof of the application and of security procedures in this regard. If the party who is trying to prove the authenticity of those signatures, if it proves that the security procedures were at place then it will be able to prove the authenticity and the originality of those signatures and document. And if it cannot prove the existence and applications of due security procedures of that electronic device, whether it is a computer, laptop, or anything else, then the matter would go in favor of the other party who is claiming that these signatures, this document, this email, this offer, this acceptance didn't belong to me. Instead, this has been sent through my account by misusing, by hacking, or by stealing my system, my laptop, my mobile phone. In this scenario, the last article I would discuss in today's lecture, that is Article 164, production of evidence that has become available because of modern devices, etc. In such cases, as the court may consider appropriate, the court may allow to be produced any evidence that may have become available because of modern devices or techniques. So taking the discussion out of the primary evidence, electronic document and electronic signature, in Article 164 it has generalized the things that the court can entertain any type of electronic evidence produced for its inspection in the court if it thinks that the evidence is authentic and is reliable. So this is basically about the admissibility of the electronic documents. Initially, when these things amended and with the introduction of and admissibility of electronic documents, we faced a lot of difficulty in court of law as well, due to the lack of the readable and legible experts, of forensic and otherwise, who could explore that evidence and can draw a reasonable and an appropriate conclusion about the authenticity of that audio video recording or that electronic document. Similarly, the same difficulty was faced by the judges in the courts of law, who didn't have a reasonable training in this regard to examine the electronic document, and that is also due to the fact that reasonable support mostly haven't been provided to the courts in this regard. We are lacking in laboratories, in modern mechanisms, techniques to explore and to decide about the authenticity and to the legality and admissibility of the electronic evidence in the court of law. So this is basically a problem which need to be resolved soon by the all the stakeholders in this regard. Thank you very much.